In the far corners of the galaxy, there existed an ancient and wise alien civilization known as the Syori. They had long thrived on their beautiful homeworld, a planet filled with stunning cities, vast forests, and incredible technologies. The Syori were once considered one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, but now their civilization was on the brink of collapse. The world they had built for millennia was beginning to fall apart, and their planet was slowly dying. Their sun had grown unstable, and strange cosmic forces had begun tearing apart their atmosphere. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and violent storms swept across the surface, destroying everything in their path. The Syori tried everything they could think of, sending out energy pulses into space, attempting to stabilize their planet's core, and even reaching out to other advanced species for help. But every plea was ignored. The Syori sent their message in a final attempt to survive, hoping that perhaps another species would be willing to lend a hand. They transmitted their distress signal across the galaxy, pouring out their desperation, hoping someone, anyone, would listen. But no one did. The other civilizations of the galaxy, many far more advanced than the Syori, turned a blind eye. To them, the Syori were no longer a race worth saving. They were too old, too weak. Their planet was beyond saving, and to help them would be a waste of resources. The galaxy's elite viewed the Syori as nothing more than a relic of the past. They saw no reason to invest time, energy, or technology to save a dying species. After all, the Syori had once been powerful, but they had lost their edge long ago. Now they were no different from the other dying civilizations that had come before them. But then, one message caught the attention of an unexpected group: humanity. On Earth, the message from the Syori was met with shock and disbelief. The people of Earth had never encountered the Syori, but they knew the story all too well. Humanity had faced its own struggles for survival, and it understood what it meant to be on the brink of extinction. And unlike the powerful alien civilizations, humanity saw things differently. Instead of turning away, humanity chose to act. Their response was immediate, filled with compassion and determination. The leaders of the world gathered, sending a united message: "We will help." It wasn't about resources or power. It was about doing what was right. The Syori, though far advanced in many ways, had reached a point where they needed help, and humanity was determined to give it to them. The message was clear: the Syori would not be left to perish alone. Despite being smaller, less advanced, and having far fewer resources than the great civilizations of the galaxy, humanity's heart and courage stood out. The message sent by Earth's leaders to the Syori offered something that no one else had: hope. The call for help was not a simple task. Saving a dying planet was no small feat. The Syori's world was on the edge of destruction, and it would take more than just advanced technology to fix it. It would take creativity, collaboration, and, above all, human determination. But humanity didn't hesitate. A team of the best scientists, engineers, and astronauts was assembled. They knew the dangers they would face, the risks of traveling to an unknown world, and the challenges that lay ahead. But they also understood that this was a mission that could not be ignored. They were not just going to watch another civilization perish. They were going to save it. As the preparations for the journey began, there was doubt. There were those who questioned whether humanity had the skills to face such a monumental challenge. Some believed the task was too great, too dangerous. But the leaders and scientists, united by a single purpose, pushed forward. They would prove that humanity had something the galaxy's greatest civilizations didn't: heart. And so, the Earthlings began their journey. The spaceships were ready, the team was set, and the mission was clear. They were heading to the Syori homeworld, not just to observe, but to act. As they launched into space, leaving Earth behind, they were not just traveling across the stars. They were carrying with them the hope of an entire civilization that had been forgotten. The galaxy may have turned its back on the Syori, But humanity would not. And with that resolve, they began their long journey, determined to make the impossible possible. As the earthbound crew prepared for their extraordinary journey, the sense of uncertainty filled the air. They were heading to a faraway planet, one that few people had ever heard of, let alone visited. The Syori homeworld was light years away, beyond the reach of most galactic travelers. Yet here were the humans, putting everything they had into a mission that had no guarantee of success. The spacecraft, a state-of-the-art vessel built by Earth's finest engineers, was ready. It was designed to withstand the harshest conditions and travel across the deepest stretches of space. The mission was simple in theory: help save the Syori and their planet. But the crew knew that the road ahead would be far from simple. They were going into unknown territory, where danger, failure, and uncertainty lurked at every corner. Captain Jane Michaels, a seasoned astronaut, was the leader of the mission. She had faced countless challenges in her career, but this was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Leading a team to save an entire species and a dying planet was a monumental responsibility. Still, her heart was resolute. She believed in humanity's strength. If anyone could succeed, it was them. And so, with a deep breath, she addressed her team as they boarded the spacecraft. "Remember, we're not just going to help them. We're going to make them believe that not all hope is lost. The galaxy may have turned away, but we are their last chance. Let's not fail them." Her words fueled the team's determination. The engineers, scientists, and medics aboard the ship were all united in their purpose. Every single member of the crew knew their role. There was no room for mistakes, and every action would need to be calculated and precise. But even with all the planning and preparation, no one could be certain of the outcome. The journey began, and as the spacecraft left Earth's atmosphere, it soared into the vastness of space. The crew settled into their routine, carefully monitoring the ship's systems and performing routine checks. Space travel, though impressive, was not without its challenges. Time stretched on in ways that felt unnatural. Days turned into weeks as they journeyed farther from their home, passing by distant stars, swirling nebulae, and strange planets. Tensions began to rise among the crew members as the journey continued. Though the mission was clear, there was an undeniable sense of uncertainty hanging over everyone. How could humanity save a planet that had already been abandoned by so many? What if the planet's destruction was beyond even their capabilities? The silence in the ship often spoke volumes, and the crew began to feel the weight of the mission pressing down on them. One evening, during a routine check, an engineer named Mark Adams ran into a critical malfunction in the ship's propulsion system. A malfunction of this nature could delay the mission for weeks, or worse, make it impossible to reach the Syori homeworld. Panic quickly spread through the crew, but Captain Michaels refused to let it overwhelm them. She knew the importance of keeping calm. "Mark, I need you to stay focused," she said, her voice steady but firm. "We've trained for moments like this. You're not alone. We'll fix it together." Mark nodded, though his hands trembled as he worked to resolve the issue. The rest of the crew rallied behind him, offering support in whatever way they could. In the face of adversity, they were united. It wasn't just their technology that would get them through this. It was their resolve and teamwork. The hours passed slowly, but after what seemed like an eternity, Mark finally managed to fix the issue. The crew cheered, not just because the problem had been solved, but because it was a reminder of how far they had come as a team. This mission was no longer just about saving the Syori. It was about proving that humanity could overcome any obstacle, no matter how large or small. With the propulsion system restored, the ship resumed its course. But as they continued on their journey, the crew's doubts did not entirely disappear. They knew that reaching the Syori planet was only the first part of the mission. The real challenge awaited them there, on a dying world, where nothing was certain, and every decision could be the difference between success and failure. Still, as they sailed through the stars, there was one thing that kept the crew moving forward: hope. Hope that their efforts would make a difference. Hope that humanity's willingness to help would be enough to save the Syori. They were not just traveling to another planet. They were traveling with a purpose, driven by something stronger than technology, something more powerful than fear. They were traveling with the belief that they could change the fate of an entire civilization. As the crew approached the Syori homeworld, the planet's troubled state became visible from space. The once beautiful world was now a swirling mass of storms and chaos. But the humans didn't turn away. They had come too far, and they had promised to help. No matter the odds, they would do everything in their power to make sure that Syori's world didn't end in silence. They were humanity, and they would not back down. The mission was only just beginning, and the crew knew that their greatest challenges lay ahead. But they also knew this. Humanity had always faced the impossible, and they had always found a way to make the impossible possible. As the humans neared the Syori homeworld, the sight of the planet from space made the severity of their mission hit them. It was a world torn apart by the unstable sun, its once beautiful landscapes now covered with swirling storms and cracks in the surface. The Syori cities that had once stood tall and proud were now nothing more than shattered ruins. The destruction was far worse than anything they had imagined. The spaceship hovered above the planet, its systems working at full capacity to scan for signs of life. From the outside, the planet seemed nearly uninhabitable, with violent lightning storms and massive clouds swirling through the sky. But the humans knew that the Syori still lived, struggling to survive against all odds. They had to act quickly. Captain Jane Michaels stood at the helm, her eyes focused on the screen in front of her. The devastation below was overwhelming, but she knew they couldn't let it defeat them. All crew members, prepare for landing. We need to make contact with the Syori as soon as possible. Our mission is just beginning, she said firmly. The crew members immediately got to work, checking the ship systems and preparing for a descent onto the planet's surface. They had studied the Syori before, learning about their technology, their history, and their culture, but nothing could have prepared them for the sight that awaited them on the ground. As the ship descended through the turbulent atmosphere, the crew could see the damage more clearly. Once vibrant forests were now reduced to charred remains. Massive craters marred the landscape, and what was once a thriving civilization now seemed like a broken shell of its former self. The ship landed on a flat area, surrounded by mountains that looked as though they had been torn apart by powerful forces. The crew was ready. They had no time to waste. They had to find the Syori survivors and begin the work of saving the planet. As the hatch of the spacecraft opened, the crew stepped out onto the surface. The air was thin, and the sky above was a sickly orange, the sun casting an eerie glow over everything. The team members adjusted their equipment and began scanning the area for signs of life. Despite the devastation, they knew there had to be some survivors. The Syori were tough, and they had fought to stay alive for this long. The humans had to help them. They moved quickly, staying in communication with the ship. Every step was calculated. The storms had made the planet's surface unpredictable, and the crew needed to be prepared for anything. As they ventured deeper into the desolate landscape, they saw signs of life. Small groups of Syori hiding in caves or ruins, too frightened to come out. Captain Michaels knew they had to approach carefully. The Syori had been alone for so long, and after being abandoned by the other civilizations, they might be wary of any help, especially from a species they had never encountered. But the humans couldn't give up. They had come to save them, and they needed to make that clear. After hours of searching, the team found a group of Syori huddled together in what was once a beautiful city center, now reduced to rubble. Their faces were weary, their eyes filled with fear. They had been struggling to survive, and their once proud civilization was hanging by a thread. When they saw the humans approach, their first reaction was not one of joy or relief, but of distrust. They had seen too many species turn away from their cries for help, and now they were faced with strangers who had come from a distant world. Captain Michaels took a step forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We're here to help," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. "You don't have to be alone anymore. We've come to save your world." The Syori looked at her, unsure of what to believe. They had been betrayed by so many before, but something in the humans' eyes told them that they were not like the others. There was no hidden agenda, no selfish motive. The humans were not looking to conquer or exploit. They were simply offering their help, no strings attached. For a long moment, the Syori said nothing, their gazes heavy with doubt. But then, slowly, one of them stepped forward, a tall, older Syori with a solemn expression on his face. "You're the first to offer help," he said, his voice strained with emotion. "We have lost everything. And yet, you come to us. Why?" Captain Michaels smiled gently. "Because we understand. Humanity has faced its own struggles. We know what it's like to fight for survival, and we know that sometimes all it takes is one person, one group, to make a difference." The Syori, though still cautious, seemed to soften at her words. They had no reason to trust the humans, yet something about them, something about their sincerity, began to ease the tension. The leader of the group nodded slowly, his eyes filled with reluctant hope. "We will listen, but we are not sure your efforts can save us. Our world is dying." "We're not going to give up," Captain Michaels said firmly. "We'll work together. You're not alone anymore." With that, the humans and the Syori began to discuss their options. The planet's survival would require much more than just rebuilding cities or restoring nature. It would need a combination of technology, resources, and innovation. But humanity had something that the other civilizations didn't: a willingness to fight for what was right, even against impossible odds. And with that, they would begin the most important mission of their lives. The sun was now a mere flicker of light behind the thick clouds, casting an orange hue over the barren land. The Syori survivors, though cautious, began to listen as the humans explained their plans for the planet's recovery. Captain Michaels and her crew had come with a goal in mind: to help the Syori rebuild their world and ensure that the destruction they had experienced would not be the end of them. The first step, however, was not an easy one. They needed to restore the planet's failing environment. The planet's atmosphere was unstable, and its ecosystems had been damaged beyond recognition. It would require advanced technology and a great deal of effort to bring it back to life. But the humans were determined, and the Syori were starting to see the sincerity in their eyes. The crew began by setting up their base of operations in the heart of what was once a grand city. The remains of towering buildings were scattered everywhere, but the humans had enough equipment to build a temporary shelter. They worked in teams, setting up scanners, creating energy shields to protect them from the violent storms, and assembling communication systems. Their first priority was to understand the full extent of the damage, and they needed to collect data to assess how to fix the planet's failing systems. Dr. Lara Carter, a brilliant environmental scientist on the crew, was the first to lead the team in collecting environmental data. She had a device that could scan the atmosphere and the soil, taking measurements that could help them understand what had gone wrong. The data began to pour in, showing that the atmosphere was thinning and filled with toxins that were harmful to the Syori and any life on the planet. The planet's core was unstable, making it harder for natural resources to regenerate. "This is worse than I imagined," Dr. Carter said, looking at the screen. "The damage is extensive, but it's not beyond repair, not if we act fast." Captain Michaels nodded. "We'll need to come up with a comprehensive plan. Let's not waste any time. We'll need the help of the Syori, but we also have the technology to speed up the process." The Syori, still hesitant but seeing the determination in the humans, gathered around to listen. They had been through so much. They had seen their world fall apart, and many had given up hope. But now, for the first time in years, there was a glimmer of hope. The humans had something they didn't: advanced technology that could help restore their world. They couldn't let this chance slip away. The Syori leader, the older male who had spoken to Captain Michaels earlier, stepped forward. His eyes were tired, but there was a spark of hope in them now. "We will help you," he said, his voice stronger than before. "We have the knowledge of our world, our history, our resources. We'll combine our knowledge with yours. Together, we can make a difference." The humans and the Syori began to work together. Dr. Carter and her team worked alongside the Syori scientists to create a plan to heal the atmosphere. They would use the human technology to filter out the toxic gases and stabilize the climate, while the Syori would provide their knowledge of natural resources and plant life to help restore the ecosystems. It was a partnership built on trust and necessity. Meanwhile, the other members of the human crew worked on securing the area around their base. The violent storms that ravaged the planet were unpredictable, and the last thing they needed was to be caught off guard. The team set up energy shields and used their advanced technology to create a safe zone for the Syori survivors. As they did, they noticed something curious. The Syori had developed a strong connection to the land, even in its damaged state. They were able to sense changes in the environment, and their deep bond with the planet seemed to give them the ability to adapt to its shifting nature. The humans marveled at this unique ability. That night, as the crew gathered around a makeshift campfire inside the shelter, Captain Michaels reflected on the progress they had made. They had only been on the planet for a few days, yet already they had formed a plan to restore the planet's environment. The Syori were beginning to trust them, and they had even begun to share their knowledge freely. It was a promising start, but there was still much work to be done. "I think we're starting to make a difference," Michaels said to her team, her voice filled with quiet pride. "We've got the technology, and they've got the heart. Together, we can fix this." But as they looked around, they knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The planet's core was still unstable, and there were many other obstacles to overcome. The storms raged on, and the planet's future was far from guaranteed. Yet, the humans and the Syori were united in their mission. They would not give up, no matter how difficult the journey became. This was humanity's chance to show the galaxy that they were not just a species that could survive. They were a species that could make the impossible possible. As the fire burned low, Captain Michaels looked out into the distance. There was still so much to do. But for the first time, she felt like they might just succeed. They had come here to help, and they were not going to stop until they had saved this world, no matter the cost. The Syori had been given a second chance, and the humans would do everything in their power to make sure it was not wasted. As the days passed, the humans and the Syori worked tirelessly side by side, each day bringing them closer to their goal. The repairs to the planet's atmosphere had begun, but there was still a long road ahead. Captain Michaels and her crew had made significant progress with their technology, but it was clear that the Syori were more than just survivors. They were resilient. They had been living through the toughest conditions for years, and now they were finally given the chance to restore their planet with the help of the humans. Dr. Lara Carter, the environmental scientist, was at the heart of the restoration efforts. She and her team were using a device that could break down harmful gases in the atmosphere and replace them with breathable air. It was a delicate process, and every misstep could result in a setback that might take months to fix. As the device hummed quietly, she watched the readings on her screen with a focused look. "How are we doing?" Captain Michaels asked, stepping up beside her. "It's working," Dr. Carter replied, her voice filled with cautious optimism. "We're starting to clear the toxins in the air. The atmosphere should be breathable soon, but it's a slow process. The more data we gather, the faster we can refine the system." Michaels nodded. "Keep at it. Every bit of progress counts." Despite the efforts to restore the atmosphere, the Syori leader had warned them that there was another problem, one that no one had anticipated. The Syori's food supply had been destroyed during the planet's collapse, and the crops that once fed their people were no longer viable. Without the proper resources to grow new food, the survivors were running out of options. While the humans were working on the environment, they realized that they needed to address this crisis quickly before it became even worse. The humans knew that they couldn't let the Syori starve. As part of their plan, they started to use their technology to build hydroponic farms, using water and artificial light to grow crops in the harsh conditions. But the crops weren't growing fast enough to meet the demand, and they needed the Syori's knowledge of agriculture to speed up the process. Captain Michaels organized a meeting with the Syori leaders, hoping they could share their agricultural expertise. The leader of the Syori, a proud but weary individual, agreed to meet with her. He had been silent for days, but now, it seemed, he was ready to work with the humans. "You have brought technology that we've never seen before," the leader said, his voice low but respectful. "But there are things that you do not understand about our world. Our crops are tied to the soil, and the land no longer provides what we need." Captain Michaels looked at the leader, her expression calm. "We understand that. But we've seen your resilience. We've seen the strength of your people. Together, we can combine your knowledge with our technology to solve this. We have methods to adapt to this planet's new conditions, but we need your help." The Syori leader hesitated for a moment, his gaze drifting toward the ruined farmland in the distance. The world he had once known, full of lush fields and vibrant ecosystems, was now little more than a wasteland. Yet, as he looked at the humans, there was something in their eyes that made him believe they could succeed. "Very well," he said finally. "We will help. We will work together." The humans and Syori then set to work on building the hydroponic farms. The humans provided the technology, but the Syori offered their deep knowledge of agriculture and how to grow food in such a harsh environment. They learned how to use the limited resources of the planet efficiently, creating the right conditions for crops to thrive. Though it wasn't a fast process, they began to see results. Meanwhile, the storms on the planet continued to rage. Powerful winds and lightning made outdoor work dangerous, but the humans had set up safe zones around their bases. Their shields kept them protected, but each storm that passed only served as a reminder of how fragile their situation was. Captain Michaels knew that they couldn't afford to make mistakes. "There's still so much to do," Michaels said to her team one evening. "The storms don't stop, and the clock is ticking, but we're not giving up. We've come this far, and we can't turn back now." The Syori, seeing the determination in the humans, were inspired. They had spent so much time alone, surviving on their own. But now they had partners who were helping them, not just out of pity, but because they truly cared about their survival. For the first time in years, hope seemed to be within reach. One of the Syori adults, a girl named Lyra, approached Dr. Carter while she worked on the hydroponic systems. Lyra was curious and eager to help, learning everything she could from the humans. "How do you make the plants grow so fast?" she asked. Dr. Carter smiled at her. "It's all about controlling the environment. Water, light, and nutrients. We've made sure the plants get everything they need to grow strong." Lyra nodded, her eyes wide with interest. "Could you teach me? We have some old books, but they're incomplete. Maybe I could help you make the plants grow even better." Dr. Carter was impressed by the girl's enthusiasm. "Of course, we can teach you. We're all learning together." As the days went on, the bond between the humans and the Syori grew stronger. The human crew had come to see the Syori not as a race in need of saving, but as true partners. Their knowledge, combined with humanity's technology, had the power to make a real difference. But the challenges were far from over. They still had to fix the unstable core, rebuild the cities, and ensure that the storms didn't tear everything apart. But despite the obstacles, Captain Michaels knew one thing for certain: they would succeed. The planet's survival depended on their unity, and they had formed a bond stronger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Together, they would overcome the impossible. The weeks passed in a blur of effort and collaboration. The humans and the Syori worked relentlessly, their combined strength and knowledge driving them forward. Captain Michaels stood on a hill overlooking the new hydroponic farm, her eyes scanning the horizon. The crops were growing, albeit slowly, and the atmosphere was gradually becoming safer to breathe. The storm clouds that had once consumed the planet seemed to be thinning, but there was still much to do. The core of the planet remained unstable, and time was running out. Dr. Laura Carter and her team had been working nonstop on refining the air filtration systems. They had successfully reduced the toxins in the atmosphere, but the planet's core was still a major concern. It was slowly decaying, and without immediate intervention, it would destabilize entirely, leading to the collapse of the planet. The humans had brought advanced technology, but they needed to find a way to use it to stabilize the core. Captain Michaels met with Dr. Carter early one morning, standing in front of a large holographic display of the planet's core. The map was filled with data and readings, some of which seemed to flash red in warning. "We're running out of time, Laura," Captain Michaels said, her voice filled with concern. "The longer we wait, the harder it will be to fix the core. If we don't do something soon, we'll lose everything." Dr. Carter nodded, her face tense. "I know, Captain. I've been working on it day and night, but the core is unstable. We need to find a way to inject stabilizing energy into it, but the technology we have isn't strong enough to reach that deep into the planet." A plan began to form in her mind, but it was risky, more dangerous than anything they had done so far. The Syori's old energy sources, which had once powered their great cities, could potentially provide the power they needed. But the energy systems were outdated, and it was unclear whether they could be adapted to stabilize the core. Michael's eyes narrowed as she thought. What if we use the Syori's energy systems to reinforce our technology? If we can use their resources and combine them with our tech, we might be able to reach the core. It's a long shot, but it could work. Dr. Carter hesitated for a moment. It might, but it's dangerous. We'd need every Syori scientist on board, and we'd have to work together to make sure we don't cause more harm than good. Michaels looked at the map again. "We don't have a choice. We're running out of time." The plan was set into motion. Captain Michaels called a meeting with the Syori leaders, explaining the situation and the risks involved. The Syori had seen firsthand how much the humans had already done to help them, and now they had to trust them completely. The leader of the Syori stood tall, his posture firm despite the exhaustion in his eyes. "We are with you," he said. "Our people have suffered much, but we will not allow our planet to fall. We will help you." The humans and the Syori scientists worked side by side, setting up a series of large devices that would amplify the energy from the Syori's old systems. It was a delicate process. One mistake could result in a catastrophic explosion. But with the combined expertise of the humans and the Syori, they managed to adapt the old technology to their needs. The Syori carefully connected their energy systems to the human stabilization technology, creating a powerful pulse that could reach the core of the planet. Dr. Carter stood at the center of the operation, watching the readings carefully. The moment of truth had arrived. "We're ready," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Captain Michaels looked at the crew, her face filled with resolve. "This is it. Let's do this." The machines hummed to life, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. A low rumble filled the air, and the sky darkened as energy began to surge into the core of the planet. The humans and the Syori held their breath, watching the monitors as the energy pulse traveled deep into the planet's crust. Would it work? Would they save the planet, or would the core collapse under the pressure? For a few agonizing moments, there was nothing but silence. The machines continued to hum, and the air grew heavy with anticipation. Then, slowly, the rumbling began to subside. The readings on the monitors started to stabilize. The core, once on the brink of collapse, was now showing signs of stabilization. The energy had worked. The planet was safe. For now. The humans and the Syori let out a collective sigh of relief. They had done it. They had managed to save the planet from destruction. But it wasn't over yet. There was still work to be done. The atmosphere had to be fully restored. The ecosystems needed more time to recover, and the storms, while weaker, were still a threat. The hydroponic farms needed more time to grow enough food to feed everyone, and the Syori needed to rebuild their cities. But in that moment, as the sky cleared and the first rays of sunlight shone through the clouds, the humans and the Syori knew that they had accomplished something extraordinary. They had not only saved a planet, but had forged a bond that could never be broken. Their combined efforts, determination, and trust had made the impossible possible. Captain Michael stood, gazing out at the horizon, where the sun finally broke through the clouds. "We've come a long way," she said quietly, "but we're not done yet. Let's finish what we started." And together, they would. The sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light across the once barren land. The planet, which had once seemed doomed to collapse, was now showing signs of recovery. The combined efforts of the humans and the Syori had turned the tide. The atmosphere was clearer, the soil more fertile, and the storms that had plagued the planet were growing weaker with each passing day. The core, once on the brink of destruction, was stable, and the planet's future seemed promising. Captain Michael stood on the edge of the newly built settlement, watching the busy workers below. The humans and Syori were working side by side, building homes, planting crops, and creating a future for the generations to come. There was still much to be done, but the sense of hope that now filled the air was palpable. Dr. Lara Carter walked up beside her, her face filled with quiet satisfaction. "It's hard to believe how far we've come," she said, her voice reflecting the weight of their journey. "I remember when we first arrived. We had no idea if we could make it through. And now it feels like a new beginning." Michaels nodded. "I've never seen anything like it. The way everyone came together, humans and Syori, united for a common cause. It's something special." In the distance, the Syori leader stood with a group of his people, watching the progress of the new settlement. The Syori, once wary and fearful of humans, had become invaluable allies. They had shared their knowledge of the planet, and the humans had shared their technology. Together, they had overcome challenges no one had thought possible. The Syori leader walked over to where Captain Michaels and Dr. Carter stood. "It's incredible," he said, his voice filled with awe. "When we first met, we had no hope. But now, we see that with your help, we can rebuild, we can grow, and we can thrive." Michael smiled at him. "It's been a long road, but you've shown the strength and resilience that made this possible. You didn't give up, and neither did we. That's what made the difference." The leader nodded. "And we will not forget what you've done for us. Our people will stand with you, Captain. We will not let this planet fall again." As the days passed, the humans and the Syori continued to work together, strengthening their bond and building a future for the planet. The once dying world was now a place of hope and renewal. The hydroponic farms were thriving, providing food for everyone, and the cities were slowly being rebuilt, powered by the advanced technology that humans had brought. In the midst of all this, Captain Michaels found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. It had been a long and difficult path, filled with moments of doubt and fear. But it had also been a journey of discovery, of finding strength and unity, of overcoming obstacles, and of realizing that even in the darkest moments, there was always hope. One evening, as she walked through the new settlement, she stopped to watch a group of children, both human and Syori, playing together. It was a beautiful sight, one that made her heart swell with pride. The future of this planet, and the future of humanity and the Syori, were intertwined now. There was no going back. Dr. Carter joined her, standing silently for a moment before speaking. "I think this is just the beginning. We've learned so much from each other. Maybe we can help other planets facing similar challenges. We've proven that unity can make a difference." Michaels looked at her, a spark of hope in her eyes. "You're right. We've learned that no matter how impossible things seem, if we work together, we can overcome anything." The two women stood there, watching the children play, feeling the weight of what they had accomplished. This was more than just the saving of a planet. It was the birth of a new partnership, one that held endless possibilities. The bond between humanity and the Syori had grown stronger with each passing day. And now, there was a sense of purpose, a sense that the work they had started here could spread beyond this world. The Syori leader walked over to them, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You've changed everything for us," he said. "You've shown us that we don't have to face our struggles alone. Together, we can build something that lasts." Michael smiled. "That's the key, isn't it? We don't face our struggles alone. We face them together." As the sun set on the planet, casting a warm glow over the settlement, Captain Michaels felt a sense of peace. The work was far from over, but the hope that had once seemed lost now burned brightly. They had saved a planet, but more importantly, they had forged a bond that would last for generations to come. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They would face it together, as partners, as allies, as friends. And in that moment, Captain Michaels knew that this was just the beginning of something much greater. Together, humanity and the Syori would reach for the stars.